Oh, hi guys. Welcome to the latest episode of Cricket Draft Insight. I hope you're all well. I'm not, but I wanted to get this video out there whilst it was still kind of, not too much time had passed. I just wanted to do a bit of a roundup, primarily about the county championship and how my team performed. I'll just touch upon white ball first. So firstly in the T20 Blast. So I'll come back to in county championship how not selecting England players really works for me. In the T20 Blast, I didn't pick Sam Curran, David Willey, Will Jacks, Jordan Cox, these X Factor players, some of whom bat quite high, maybe bowl 4-overs as well. And it's not just hindsight, they're obviously the players who are going to perform. And, my differentials left me about 584 or something. So we'll see next year whether, really I need to get that balance a bit better. In the One Day Cup, I didn't do too badly, actually. I think I finished about 184th. And because I was doing so well in the county championship, I think I was setting my standards really high. But I finished second in the game week in the final. Ali Orr scored 100, a captain Ethan Brooks, who obviously did well. So given the amount of people that were playing, 184th in the One Day Cup, certainly not a disgrace. But let's move on to the county championship. So in the county championship, I finished 50th. Now I was around 10th for a while. So I did tail off the last couple of weeks. I didn't have a great penultimate week. And the last week I had a horrible days 1 and 2, and I went as low as about 82nd. So actually to get back up to 50th seems pretty decent. Chahar, of course, Rahul Chahar, 8 wickets. Jamie Porter took a few wickets. Somebody else, Saif scored two 250s. So that got me back up to 50th. So in the grand scheme of things, I think upward about 9,000 people playing. I finished 1,008th and 900, or 1,022nd and 998th the last couple of years. So finishing 50th, can't complain. So I just want to talk through the team and how that worked. So I started with Caleb Jewell, right? And I may have touched upon this before, but I was following him in the winter. So his averages were not great, but his conversion rates were very good. And he wasn't having a great time in the Australian season, but he then just seemed to rediscover his touch towards the end of the season. Certainly scored 100 in a one-day game. And I just thought, age 27, Division 2, had a bit of a wobble, but seems to be back in form. Got a good conversion rate. He's bound to thrive in Division 2 of the county championship. Now, I think he did only score 100, which he turned into a double 100, but he scored a lot of quick 50s, okay? So he was a really good signing, and I think reasonably sort of a differential. I then had my usual, because I had Jewell, I had to mix and match between my usual other batters, so Bohannon, Hammond, Carlson. I must have dropped Carlson at one point, and then as always, he then scored some runs. Bohannon I ended up kind of moving on from. Of course, I did in the One Day Cup after he had a shocker of a week, and then he scored 200s. Hammond did all right, and I brought Ali Orr in late on, who did well for me in the One Day Cup, and I'm hoping Hampshire back him at the start of next season, because I think kind of like Jewell, I think he could go on and do really well. But yeah, Jewell was the bedrock of my batting, with Carlson in there, who I've mentioned before. His stats actually deceptively good in recent years. Whether or not he can do that in Division 1, of course. Hammond, we'll see next year, because like I say, or one or two of us crop up. We'll see what I do. Now, Saif Saib was obviously a star. Saif Saib and Ben Kellaway, okay? So, Saif Saib, I'd often have Rob Keogh, and at the start of the season, I thought he wasn't going to bowl because he wasn't fit. So I went with Zabe, and he did well. And then there was a week where he basically didn't bowl and he didn't score many runs, and I thought this isn't going to work if he's an all-rounder. But whether by accident or design, I ended up sticking with him, and I think he then scored another 100, and obviously went on to score 6 or 700s. He did chip in with the ball, and it's interesting because obviously he's not in the Lions squad, and I've seen a few comments, some people saying, well, he's 27, he shouldn't be in. Well, he's just had one good season. But again, when I'm doing this, I'm never somebody who's kind of just going for, oh, this player did well before, this player scored 100 last week. I'm looking for upward trajectory players, and I think there were a lot of signs. We knew he could score quickly, could do well, and now we just needed a bit of consistency. Now, admittedly, I didn't expect him to be as consistent as he has been. And the same goes for Kellaway. Did really well in the One Day Cup a few years ago, and he got up and running in the county championship. And I heard one of the commentators say early in the season, oh, the average 10 and hadn't taken many wickets. You couldn't really expect this. But, I would say, if you don't expect players to do more than they've done before, I don't know why you're watching. So surely the beauty of cricket, any day, any player can produce their career best performance. In a test match, a first-class match, the highest ever undefeated last wicket stand could happen, okay? We watch because players can do better. Records can be broken. Again, Kellaway, I think he scored 150 and 180. I didn't quite expect that, okay? But I did think he was going to score some quick runs and take some wickets, and he was a very good selection. I didn't pick him initially because there was talk of Glamorgan having 2 spinners, but I still wasn't certain he was going to play, and they ended up playing Zain Hassan, which gave them some balance because he opened and bowled a bit, allowed them to get Kellaway in. And I didn't actually have him in the first few weeks. But then even though he'd been quiet, I brought him in as a differential, and then he did well. But Zabe and Kellaway, obviously fantastic players for me, given that maybe they weren't in a lot of people's teams early on. And then the bedrock was Higgins and Barnard. Now as a strategy, okay, I'd always captain an all-rounder. Go back to the One Day Cup, there was a week where I captained Balderson, right? And it worked out well because he scored 250s and he did all right with the ball, wickets and economy. It doesn't always work like that. But a lot of people didn't pick Balderson, and they certainly didn't captain him, and they didn't even pick Lancashire players, even though they were the only team that had a double game week. So he was literally the only double game week all-rounder, and people didn't even pick him. Anyway, in the county championship, normally Ryan Higgins is my captain. He finished with 2 golden ducks, right? Which I could say in a way is what cost me not finishing higher than 50th. But he was still up there. He must have dropped a bit at the end, but he must have been about, one of the top 10 players or something, or maybe just out of there now. So even without being amazing, I think he did only score 250s. He's still up there. And I know you could say, well, you're better off captaining Zabe or whatever. But for me, it's kind of a decision done. There's still logic. If I captain Zabe, or if I'm in an hour in each week what I'm doing, for me, I captain Higgins. And I had Barnard alongside him. We started off all right, but I'm not sure if he quite lived up to expectations. And I'm wondering next year, because I did think, even last year, I know it's easy to say, but I really did think there were signs that George Hill was going to do well. And James Coles is one who I'm always because of the other players I've had, I never quite get him in. So at the moment, I'm thinking actually next year I might go Zabe, Higgins, Coles and Hill. But then Kellaway would have to be left out. Even Brooks, in red ball maybe. But yeah, so Zabe, Kellaway, Higgins and Barnard in the all-rounder roles. Now, I did actually start with Ben Cox in the wicketkeeper role because I went for a whole 1 player per team thing, and he actually did quite well, scored quick runs. But in the end, I moved back to Pepper, who was somebody I've liked for a long time. Obviously scores quickly. Again, though, he got injured in the last game, so didn't take some catches. I mean, the difference between those points, because it was so tight, you could have been finishing 40th or so. Then on the bowling, now Ben Code took a lot of wickets. I can't bear the thought of not picking Ben Code and him doing well. But obviously he missed the end of the season through injury. And, you think he's been fitter, but he's been injured. So I figure next year, if I did have Hill, I can, get by with not having Code. Jamie Porter did really well. And then basically the other bowler I started with Fergus O'Neill. Now, a few people were aware of Fergus O'Neill. He was in about 7% of teams. People seen him in the Big Bash. Could score some runs too, had some excellent numbers. And it's really fascinating because I picked O'Neill based on numbers, and then I picked Harry Conway because I'd seen him bowl. Harry Conway, just phenomenal, fantastic selection. Took about 20 wickets at 21 or 21 at 20. Wasn't in many people's teams. Looked like he was enjoying himself. I've heard some speculation that he might come back next year, and I think there's been some changes to the visa regulations. I don't think he's going to be playing in the Big Bash, so I don't know if he's only going to play for 30 days, get a 30-day visa. But the thing is, as I've said about Daniel Hughes at Sussex, Conway doesn't have a state contract, so I don't know what sort of condition he's going to be in, what the future holds. So we'll see if he comes back next year. I then had Rocky Keole, who did all right and tailed off a bit, and I had Kishore for a couple of games, and of course I had Chahar. So these guys, generally all differentials, complemented everything else. But as I touched upon before, didn't pick England players, right? Your England players for the county championship, just say Ben Duckett, right? Maybe he plays a batch of 7 county championship games at the beginning. Maybe he plays the 2nd, the 4th, and the 7th because England let him play. You don't know, right? And some people have the theory these are top players, they'll do well. The consequence of not selecting any player, okay, I had Sam Cook at the beginning and he did get called up, but the consequence of not selecting these England players is I didn't have to do penalty transfers. I made 1 penalty transfer, which was after a block of T20 blast, and I think I got carried away with differential bowlers. I couldn't make my mind up, and it cost me -8 points. But because I never put myself in a position where I'm having to manage players getting called into the England side, it meant I could have O'Neill, And I know I transfer him out in 4 weeks, but fine. If somebody else is injured or don't play, I've got 2 transfers. Fine. Conway has to leave in 4 weeks. Kishore, Patterson. I didn't design Patterson in the end. I think I ended up with 2, Rocky Keoli and Kishore maybe at the same time. But I had enough on my bench that it didn't matter. So for me, obviously people finished ahead of me, but finishing 50th, definitely captain and all-rounder. Definitely avoid England players. And I definitely avoid penalty transfers. That's the strategies that have served me well. Don't pick England players, avoid penalty transfers, and captain all-rounder. So yeah, just some thoughts on the players that served me well. Quite consistent selection throughout. Yeah, really pleased to finish 50th in a good position. Big ask to back that up next year, but we'll have a go, won't we? Let me know in the comments section how you got on. Thank you very much for watching. How's that?